Happy New Year's everyone, Soberoni of G&A Reviews here with a servant spotlight for the spiciest archer, Arjuna. We'll be examining his stats and skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize him effectively, and an overall grade comparing him to how he stacks up to the other 5-star servants. I also have a spotlight for the other New Year's servant, Karna, linked in the description below, so please do check that out right after this. Now, onto Arjuna's stats. Arjuna has a max HP of 13,230, which is very low among 5-star archers and low for a 5-star in general, but his max attack of 12,342 is actually the highest among all archers in the game and in the top 10 among all servants in the game. Taking a look at his skills, his first skill is Clairvoyance, rank C+, which greatly increases his crit star drop rate for 3 turns between 18 to 36% depending on level. And that's upgraded through an interlude to Clairvoyance Archer rank B+, which greatly increases his crit star drop rate for 3 turns between 30 to 50% depending on level, and applies debuff immunity for 5 turns. His second skill is Blessed Hero rank A, which increases his own Noble Phantasm gauge for 25%, restores his HP per turn for 5 turns between 1,000 to 2,000 depending on level, and grants him between 4 to 8 crit stars per turn for 5 turns depending on level. Finally, his last skill is Mana Burst Flame rank A, which increases Buster Card effectiveness for 1 turn between 20 to 30%, and increases his Noble Phantasm strength for 1 turn between 10 to 20%, both depending on level. Looking at his passives, he has Magic Resistance rank C, which increases debuff resist by 15%, Independent Action rank A, which increases his crit strength by 10%, and Divinity rank B, which applies a damage bonus of 175 to his attacks. Moving on to his deck and Noble Phantasm, Arjuna has a hybrid Arts Buster deck with quick Arts Buster and a Buster Noble Phantasm. His Noble Phantasm is Pashupata, which deals heavy damage to all enemies between 300 to 500% depending on level, has a 30% chance to inflict death, with an additional 50% chance to inflict death on divine enemies, and decreases defense for 3 turns between 20 to 40% depending on overcharge. That can be upgraded through an interlude, which will increase the damage modifier to between 400 to 600% depending on level, as well as increase the death chance from 30 to 50%, and the additional chance to inflict death on divine enemies from 50 to 80%. Taking a closer look at his cards, we can see that his quick card hits twice, his arts hits 3 times, his buster hits 3 times, his extra hits 5 times, he has a Noble Phantasm gain rate of 0.51%, and a star rate of 8%. What this means is he has decent Noble Phantasm gain just due to having 3 arts cards despite that low Noble Phantasm gain rate, and he's an average star generator thanks to the high hits on his extra card. Much like Karna, Arjuna has his work cut out for him being in a class that is already saturated with incredibly strong servants. But he does immediately make a name for himself by having an even higher attack stat than Gilgamesh, which is pretty impressive. He also sports a pretty strong skill in Blessed Hero, which grants him up to 8 crit stars per turn, a 2k heal per turn, and decent Noble Phantasm charge. So over those 5 turns, you're going to be generating 40 crit stars and healing for 10,000 HP. This could easily have been separated into 3 different skills on any other servant and still made for a decent kit, but having all 3 effects makes it outstanding, and this skill is Arjuna's backbone, and it's what gives him his staying power and his utility. Although not nearly as impressive, his first skill, Clairvoyance, synergizes well with Blessed Hero. Arjuna's crit star generating isn't anything above average, but with this skill and Blessed Hero active, he can be a pretty consistent crit star engine. Blessed Hero is pretty much Fragment of 2030 at max rank, and Clairvoyance just amplifies that crit star generation drastically, especially post Strengthening Quest, which also gives it a very strong debuff immunity effect. And finally, like Karna, he also possesses Mana Burst Flame rank A, which is an important skill for damage. Do note that Mana Burst Flame is different from the normal Mana Burst, as it splits the buff between the Noble Phantasm strength and Buster Card effectiveness, rather than just buffing all Buster Cards. So what that means is your Noble Phantasm damage will actually be higher, but your Buster Cards won't receive as much of a buff as they otherwise would from a regular Mana Burst. Since damage is the most important thing for Arjuna, I do recommend maxing Mana Burst Flame first, followed by Blessed Hero, and then Clairvoyance. While Blessed Hero is an incredible skill, I would level it second just because even at level 1 it's still pretty strong, and due to the nature of the damage formulas, your Noble Phantasm strength will scale considerably with every level you raise your mana burst, so you're just going to get more return on investment from that. And when it comes to Arjuna's Noble Phantasm, it is pretty strong. It doesn't have a bonus against divine enemies, but it does come with an extra chance to inflict death on divine enemies and all enemies in general, and has a really strong defense debuff attached, making it great for leading off a Noble Phantasm chain or a Brave chain, much like Karna's. His Noble Phantasm is capable of some big damage just due to Arjuna's incredibly high attack and Mana Burst Flame, despite it being AoE, but unfortunately, instant death is a horribly unreliable mechanic in the game, and it's almost never going to work against enemy servants, ever. Meaning that if Gil and Tesla are anti-servant archers, Arjuna is more of just a farming archer or a non-servant killing archer. Also, because of his mixed deck, he can't take as much advantage of Mana Burst Flame as Karna or any other servant with a Mana Burst skill, because he can't bust or Brave Chain. His Noble Phantasm gain is also pretty inconsistent since it actually isn't that high unless you can get Brave Chains. And while he does have the highest attack of all archers, it's a bit misleading since Tesla and Gil, and pretty much any archer with 2 Buster cards, will put out more damage than him on average because of the extra Buster card damage bonus. And lastly, the cooldown on Blessed Hero is just absurdly high. It's 10 turns even when it's fully maxed, so you can't really have it active as often as you would like. Arjuna works best on heavily offensive teams since his heal gives him decent enough sustain that he doesn't really need a healer to keep him alive, and he can help stronger servants by providing crit stars and softening targets for his Noble Phantasm. To that extent, he does work exceptionally well with offensive crit servants like Gil, Okita, Emiya, Lancer Alter, Nobu, and pretty much any rider. Just be aware that even with his skills maxed, he won't be anywhere near top tier in terms of crit star generating. He works more as a supplemental star generator in these cases. And if you don't have those servants or would rather build a team around Arjuna, then the usual supports Waver, Hans, Caesar, and David are your best options. Hans and Waver can buff his crit damage, Caesar can make his Noble Phantasm hit significantly harder, and David gives him even more survivability with an evade. Arjuna's Bondcraft Essence, Blessed Hero, increases his Noble Phantasm strength by 30% and his crit star gather rate by 1000%. This is a phenomenal craft essence, and honestly I wish it was Karna's Bondcraft Essence as well, but it gives Arjuna a huge boost to his Noble Phantasm damage while also making him pretty viable as a crit archer, which indirectly makes his first 2 skills a lot better. So I do highly recommend using this Bondcraft Essence if you have it. Otherwise, you should use Halloween Princess or Kaleidoscope for farming, Limited Zero and Black Grail for Noble Phantasm damage. Black Grail is especially great on Arjuna since his heal can actually negate the demerit. And finally, you can use Fragment of 2030 if you really want to make him into a more offensive support crit star generator, or Victor of the Moon if you want him to be more crit focused. Overall, Arjuna is a strong servant. He has a decently strong Noble Phantasm, really good skill set, versatility as an offensive support, a top tier Bondcraft Essence, and of course, ridiculously high attack. Unfortunately for him though, he doesn't really live up to the standard that Tesla and Gil set, just due to his numerous drawbacks. His Noble Phantasm isn't anywhere as strong as theirs, and its secondary death effect really only applies to farming small enemies and maybe the occasional mini-boss. His art stack waters down his damage considerably, and his signature skills cooldown is just too long to be used reliably in longer fights compared to something like Tesla's Natural Intelligence. So overall, Arjuna does get a B from me. He's a solidly strong servant in his own right, and more than good enough to take down pretty much anything in the game, but he doesn't do anything to really set himself apart from the far stronger servants in his class, and he does have his fair share of weaknesses. And those are my thoughts on Arjuna, a solid archer if you don't have Tesla or Gil, and if you do have Tesla or Gil, he's a nice compliment to them. If you guys rolled him or have any stories you want to tell me, let me know in the comments. And I'm sorry that the spotlight was pretty late, but I was out of town for Christmas week. But don't worry, Jekyll and Hyde spotlight as well as the other 3-star London servant spotlights are coming later this week, and the Saber Wars guide and spotlights will also be coming in the coming days. For now, please do check out the Karna spotlight also up on the channel, and don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. If you haven't already, please do join our party over at Discord and follow us on Twitter, both linked in the description below. And with that, I will see you all in the next Spotlight. Soberoni out. Later.